Now we can say good morning. Today is Tuesday, February 18th. It is 8:30 a.m., and I'm here to welcome everyone to the Finance and Physical Resources Committee. Welcome to fellow commissioners, staff, members of the public. Glad you are here. Thank you for taking your time to come to the meeting this morning. Like to see you. With that, we will open up to public comment. Is there any public comment this morning? Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment, and that will bring us to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Questions, comments, discussion, anything that has to be pulled? Okay, all those in favor of passing the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. That brings us to item 3 from the Bureau of Equalization. Wayman.
Yes, good morning. This is a request to the Board of Commissioners to approve the Kent County Remonumentation Revised Plan as required by the Office of Land Survey and the Remonumentation. The State Survey and Remonumentation Act 1990, PA 345 as amended, requires the State Survey and Remonumentation Commission to promulgate rules and guides counties to create a revised county plan. The revised plan commits to remonument, original public land survey corners, property controlling corners, and protracted corners. The revised plan must list other corners to be included or excluded, as well as outline any modifications that may have occurred since the last update. The act ensures the regular review of a county monumentation plan, assesses its current validity, and modifies it for recent technologies. The Kent County Revised Plan addressed recommended changes for plan documentation, peer group standards and qualifications, specifications, and land corner recordation certificate requirements. It also assures local control and consistency moving forward and permits additions if desired by the county in the future. The proposed revisions have been reviewed by the Bureau of Equalization Director as the county grant administrator, the county monumentation peer group, and the county surveyor, and meets the requirements set forth by the state of Michigan.
Thank you, Wayman. Is there a motion to approve?
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Questions, comments, and discussion, and we will start with Commissioner Morgan.
Hey, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question for Matt. This is an ongoing process, I understand that, but what kind of history, when did we start this program? And it seems like it's been around a long time, before 1990.
Yeah, so the county was originally brought before the Board of Commissioners in the early 1980s by a visionary group of leaders who recognized the need in our county to shore up some of our property corners. The plan was funded initially fully by the Board of Commissioners under the leadership, I think, initially of Vern Ehlers was, I think, one of the initial chairs who brought this program forward.
It goes back a while.
It goes back a little while, a few portraits ago, yeah. And so the county has been doing this a long time and was recognized as a leader in remonumentation. The state plan that's being revised today, recommended today, started in 1990 when the state really sort of modeled a lot of the remonumentation program off of Kent County's program, and came up with a grant funding mechanism through the fees charged at the Register of Deeds offices to fund the program on a statewide level through a redistributed grant program. And so that's the history on it.
Puts that in context. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Voorhees.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Matt. This has been a question of mine through the years. We talk about back to monumentation of the 1980s and 90s, and then we think of the progress that's been made in GPS, and I'm just concerned about the cost and the need of the physical monument being placed over against what's available nowadays in mapping and all of that through technology. But what kind of costs are we looking at in our monumentation upkeep and
Our annual grant award is, I think this year is $127,809. So that's what we're expending annually here in Kent County. When I first started at the county, and I remember sitting down with Harv Hubers, who was my predecessor, he said the phrase, he said, Matt, remember, good fences make good neighbors. And I'm a very pro-technology person, and I believe that today in 2020, with modern GPS systems, we have an excellent way to help find and locate corners. I believe there's something substantial about having that iron in the ground, though. It's a physical, tangible thing. It's immovable, and it's really not dependent on the technology. I think in other counties that are not as mature as Kent County, where they don't already have the iron in the ground, I believe that the costs to locate corners are substantially lower because of the technologies that we can employ. However, I do think that for the general government corners, you're actually going off of a physical tie-in, and that helps all of the surveys, which new plats and things are governed by, are actually going off of a physical point. There is, although in 2020, the variation is pretty insignificant, there is still variation in terms of how the technology can come up with a point. In survey, I was taught, again, by some of the first peer group meetings that I went to, the surveyors all told me, it's like, well, it's really how much are you willing to pay for that incremental level of precision, right? And so you can't get more precise than the actual physical point on the ground. And so I think there's an interesting juxtaposition, but I would say, having been a blend of both on the technology side and also on the tangible nature of the physical monuments, I think there will always be a place for the physical monument at key points, certainly.
Go ahead.
Even to the point of, maybe monument physical, because that can be moved, people can mess with it. Maybe not down to quite as finite as what you can with the GPS. But yeah, I just question are we keeping up with technology, or is it just something that we've always had? And I can remember when I first went to Lansing, they said, well, it's that monument that sits out there in the yard. I said, I didn't see that monument over there. It's just a stone, but it's the, what do you call that kind of monument? That's the starting point. And yeah, I just always question that. Are we keeping up with technology? And that's the big thing.
Most certainly. I think part of the reason for the state law change for the revision that you have before you today is to ensure that the other 82 counties, as well as Kent County, really that the technology is allowed to be updated on a frequent basis so that the latest technologies can be availed, all with the purpose of driving down the costs to administer the corners to make sure that we're taking advantage of that. So I think that's a part of it, certainly.
Anyone else? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. That brings us to item number 4 from the Health Department. Wayman?
Yes, this is a request to the Board of Commissioners to approve the State of Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs grant agreement to accept and appropriate $93,600 to the 2019-20 Health Fund budget and to authorize the board chair or designee to execute the grant agreement, approve extensions, amendments, and increases to the grant appropriation not to exceed 15% of the original award. LARA has provided funding to be used for education, communication, and outreach regarding the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. The Health Department and the Kent Intermediate School District have agreed to a partnership which will provide education about medical marijuana use and safety measures and the legal and ethical issues surrounding the Michigan Medical Marijuana Program. In addition to the partnership will include the creation of a joint messaging campaign around youth use prevention. To support the work required by the grant, the Health Department will receive $93,600 to cover the cost of staffing, contractual, promotional, and educational materials, and overhead costs. The agreement period for the LARA grant agreement is January 1, 2020 through September 15, 2020. Corporate Counsel will review and approve all documents as to form prior to signature.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Questions, comments, and discussion, and we'll start with Commissioner Voorhees.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I expect this has good intentions, but I'm concerned in the area of what kind of commitments does this make upon the county, upon our health department? I'm concerned.
Right.
When we
I'll
sign
have
into it.
Teresa Branson come up and talk. We're simply attempting to abide by what the state law requires in this particular case, Commissioner. I think we all are aware of some of the dangers and the issues that result from changes in our community. I'll have Teresa Branson maybe
Good morning.
add a little bit more to that.
Hey, Tricia.
Good morning. Thank you for your comments and questions and concerns, Commissioner. When the Health Department received these funds last year, we were really careful in our approach in terms of what our focus was going to be on, given the law has passed both now for medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, which is why we chose specifically to focus on youth access and youth use. In partnership with the KISD, and just focus on education, informing people of what the law is, as well as just connecting to those resources and focusing on prevention, because we share in some of those same concerns, especially when it comes to the fact that we have youth in our community that are using as early as age 12. So the earlier that we can begin and to get better data and surveillance around what the use is like in Kent County, the better we can choose strategies to address that locally.
Go ahead,
So
Commissioner Voorhees.
you feel we are not making a commitment to anything of decisions that should come before this body?
Well, what we're making decisions on with the grant funds that we have here is commitment to educate communities and work with schools on the impact that may have. A lot of people in our community have questions around what the law is, and we're utilizing our health education staff from the Kent Intermediate School District to engage superintendents, counselors, school liaisons, and school resource staff, because they're kind of like that front line when it comes to youth in our community. So that, at this point, that is the commitment that we're looking at to the board today with these funds, is just to educate around the impact that could have on use. The majority of these funds, about $30,000, is used for a campaign. In 2019, we started some messaging with 3 or 4 other counties that are in the region, just to have some collaborative messaging. So 30,000 of this 93 is going to focus on geofencing and contracting that out, so we can make sure that the messages are placed in places where youth are gathering. So that is what our focus is with these dollars, but beyond that, right now, we're not making any other commitments.
Can you just share some of that messaging from last year?
Yeah, so the messaging last year, so we didn't do a campaign last year, but the messaging that was with the schools, and we, with these funds, we're targeting 2 2.5-hour sessions. That will be, again, in partnership with our health educators and Steve Dillman from the Kent Intermediate School District. But the messaging to the school superintendents and school personnel will be a synopsis of Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, the law, regulations, and restrictions, discuss marijuana use, including vaping and the associated health impacts of that, messaging and talking points for educators, adolescents, and parents, and new presentation approaches and strategies and resources for schools. But the campaign, we did a billboard campaign, and the billboard campaign that we did in 2019 was on Lock It Up. So making sure that parents that do have access to medical marijuana, that they are locking it up and keeping it safe so that it limits youth gaining access to it. And that was a simple message, but that was the message that we focused on in 2019. Now we'll be talking more to parents and schools to make sure that those messages in 2020 are driven by data, or driven by other things that parents and schools feel like they want to get out there.
Okay, Commissioner Whitten?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to ask a little bit more about the messaging, and also, who are we using internal information, internal data? What's helping draft our messaging techniques? And the reason I ask is there have been some education campaigns that have worked well and some that have not. You know, I think of the DARE campaign in the 90s and how ineffective that unfortunately was. So could you delve a little bit more into what's determining communication to our youth around prevention?
Well, as mentioned, the campaign before was around Lock It Up. We haven't yet determined what exactly the messages are going to be for this campaign. We just know that we're targeting youth, and we're targeting parents, and we're targeting the messages in places that youth are gathering. But we do need to spend time with these, in partnership with KISD and other community partners to drive what those messages are. When the data right now, the most data we have would be more like from the MiFi data, the Michigan Profile for Healthy Youth, to kind of take a look at, are there some trends in our community that we're seeing marijuana use more prevalent in certain populations? I don't have that data right in front of me now, but our goal long-term would be to get better data around marijuana use so we can target the messages to specific groups and communities that may have a higher likelihood of youth using marijuana. But today, you know, we have not developed and designed what those messages are, but we need to do that in conjunction with community. But aside from prevention and talking about health impacts, we really have to hear from community and KISD on that, along with informed by our health department staff. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morgan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In all this conversation, I don't hear much about the vocations that screen for drug and alcohol use in order to get a job, and what kind of impact that could have on these kids. And I'm just wondering, is that a piece of the puzzle that we should include or not include, or because, you know, there are a lot of vocations out there that have to screen for this.
Right. Yep.
And it certainly, if you test positive, that's going to have an impact.
Right.
So I'm not hearing any of that. I mean,
Yeah, and unfortunately, like with these dollars, because we can only focus on education with these dollars. However, the health department is in partnership with Cherry Health and the Lakeshore Regional Entity. We'll have some other requests that are going to come before the board very soon around programs that are associated with minors in possession and also minors in possession of marijuana. So we are going to have to take a look at the legality of different things because, like you said, youth are, people are being screened and what impact that does have. So we do have to, together with our partners, identify what are some of those resources that we can do to kind of look ahead to that and head it off so that we can minimize the impact of youth opportunities for employment in the future. So thank you for your point, well taken.
Commissioner Bukowski?
I'm confused. If I can ask Commissioner Voorhees a question, what are you afraid of in this? You talk. I understand Commissioner Morgan's comment that children don't understand the consequences of their actions, but you seem to allude to if we approve this, we approve so much more.
Go ahead, you can respond,
yeah.
Commissioner Voorhees.
I spent 6 years in Lansing in the legislature, and I don't remember hardly any agreement that didn't go out with some strings attached or some commitments attached, or you're going to do this and we're going to do that. I just don't want to be signing something that says, oh yeah, we'll take the money, but in there is that we're going to do this or we support this, and that's my concern is what's the boilerplate that may go along with this agreement.
Yeah, the boilerplate in this grant is very similar to the one that we received and brought before the board in 2019. So I do assure you, we have combed through the funding even before we wrote the application and proposal for the grant. So it is strictly for the $93,000. We are utilizing some of the funds to support our marketing communications manager, Steve Kelso's time to help us with the messaging in the campaign. A portion of that for contracting. Some of our health educators' time, our health education supervisors' time, time from Steve Dillman from KISD to co-facilitate the trainings. And the last portion of the funds is to bring in a keynote speaker to kind of just give us more education around what's being seen nationally in some strategies for prevention. But that is, if there's anything else hidden in there, then Linda, before we sign the contract, will be combing through all of that for us, so.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Womack?
Have they planned to include any students in some of the planning to make sure we know where the, where the children are gonna be grouping at and meeting? And I mentioned you wanted to advertise where the children are at, but do they have any type of advisory council that includes youth in this campaign?
Right now, like I was mentioning earlier, the messaging hasn't been done. I think that is a good idea. We have done that with other substance use prevention campaigns. We had a campaign called About Last Night, which is focusing on youth and young adult binge drinking. And so we did specifically go out and talk to youth, 21 to 34, about drinking, and utilize the focus group findings to drive what the messages are, and I think something like that would be effective for this campaign as well.
Okay, and what age group are you gonna start at with the marijuana? Cause like my, work with the 21 and up is basically, with marijuana, it definitely would be late.
Yeah, and for some of that, again, because we're talking about minors, so we have to be very careful with the marijuana use and minors, so we are gonna have to work again very closely with the schools in order to help drive what those messages are going to be.
Okay, thank you.
I'm curious with this, how are you going to address questions that impact that whole recreational marijuana thing when this is specifically Michigan medical marijuana?
Yeah, and the funders are really tight on that. So we were looking in to see if we could use some of the funds to address recreational. Laura was specific, at least in terms of your application, because we had to make some tweaks to the application to make sure it was around medical. However, through the PowerPoint presentation that we developed last year and plan to build on this year, Laura is in support if we're able to address some of those questions, because people will have questions to distinguish the two. So we will plan on addressing at least through our presentations to the schools.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. That brings us to item number 5 on our agenda from Kent County Community Action. Wayman?
Yes, this is a request to accept and appropriate $203,200 to the 2020 Kent County Community Action Fund from the Michigan Department of Transportation for the Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Program. MDOT provides federal pass-through funds to purchase replacement buses for transportation services for seniors or persons with disabilities throughout Kent County. The federal pass-through funds from the United States Department of Transportation Federal Transit Administration provides 80% or $162,000 in MDOT, and MDOT provides 22% or $40,600. The grant period was authorized effective September 6, 2019, with an expiration date of September 5, 2022, and includes a multi-year process based on application submission, distribution of award, purchase of new vehicles, and the final disbursement of payment. Corporate Counsel will review and approve all documents prior to signature.
Okay, is there a motion to approve?
Support?
Okay, moved and supported. Questions, comments, and discussion? Yes, Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, by reading it another time, my question's been answered. Sorry, Susan.
Okay, that's all right. Commissioner Bukowski's got a follow-up for you.
Yeah, just since you're here. Good morning. What is this purchase exactly?
This purchase will allow us to purchase 3 vehicles.
All right, cool.
And they're already being built for us.
All right, cool, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. That brings us to item number 6 from the treasurer, Wayman.
Yes, this is a request to the Board of Commissioners to establish the County Delinquent Tax Revolving Fund 2020 collection account, and to authorize the sale of general obligation limited tax notes, Series 2020, in the amount not to exceed $22 million. The Board of Commissioners annually approves the establishment of the Kent County Delinquent Tax Revolving Fund Collection Account pursuant to the provision of PA 206 of 1893 as amended. The county has annually issued tax notes to pay local governments and itself for delinquent real property tax since 1973. Last year, the county issued $16.2 million in Series 2019 tax notes for the delinquent 2018 real property taxes. The note proceeds are utilized by the county treasurer to purchase the right to all delinquent 2019 real property taxes that are due to any governmental unit levying taxes. The county treasurer is able to assess an administrative fee and interest to cover any costs associated with this activity.
Is there a motion to approve?
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Questions, comments, and discussion? We'll start with Commissioner Morgan.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. As I say every year, this is a non-mandated program that we do, and so when you hear a lot of talk from our local units of government saying, what has the county done for me lately? I think this is one of these big things that we do for local governments, so it's nice to have, to make them whole, and it's nice to be able to administer such a program, so thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Wooden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two questions, one quick and one less quick. By paying the delinquent taxes on local governments, forgive me for not remembering, does that include our school districts as well?
Yes.
Thank you. And then my other question is regarding the difference between the number of tax notes we issued for the delinquent 2018 property taxes and what we are expecting to allow for the delinquent 2019 taxes. It looks like there was a bit of a jump. Is that because we highball the estimates all the time every year, or is?
We just never know, and the treasurer always tells us that he never wants to be under the number.
Gotcha.
We always are around 21, 22 million.
Okay.
It's come up to 17, I believe, 18 million in the past. Last year was 16.2. We just never want to be under the number.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bukowski.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo Commissioner Morgan's comments, as I do every year. And that bit of clarity for those listening at home. Again, we purchase the school district or the township or city's tax debt. So if they're owed $1,000, we give them $1,000. We don't give them. Well, yeah, we pay $1,000, and then we collect all of that. So as Commissioner Morgan says, that cash flow process that we're able to do for all the taxing jurisdictions is a huge benefit. And again, talk about collaboration, working together. So yeah, it is. People like to ask the question, what does the county do? And this is something that you got to go to the whiteboard to explain. But pretty much every elected official and administrator, I would imagine, appreciates this opportunity.
And they do.
No matter how small their debt. So again, good work, Kent County, and we'll keep trying to do that.
Wayman, normally we know like how much was collected.
I can get you that amount. I don't know if that's been on this particular request, but I can get you that number if you need it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my point
typically-
is, it's generally very high,
it's
what we end
typically-
up collecting
Yeah, it's-
back. There's very little that doesn't end up
that's
being
correct.
collected.
Yeah, it's
But I
101%.
would like to have that in the future. I want to know that,
We'll let you know
Yeah.
before the board meeting, if you
That would
want
be
it.
great.
Okay, good.
okay, anyone else? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. That brings us to Commissioner Miscellaneous this morning. Okay, there's no Commissioner Miscellaneous. That will lead us to adjournment. Our next meeting date is March 17th.